and many other...
Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. First, a look at this hour's headlines. Summit talks between Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russia President Vladimir Putin underway at the Kremlin in Moscow. All eyes on China's efforts to broker peace in Ukraine. Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is in Ukraine, visits war-battered Bucha in Kyiv. He is to meet President Volodymyr Zelensky shortly. Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson's dossier on Partygate made public. Johnson admits he misled Parliament, telling MPs that all rules on parties were followed, but his comments were unintentional. Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen to stop over in New York and Los Angeles in the United States en route her trip to South American countries. China has raised strong objections to the plan. And big win for backers of Israeli settlement in the West Bank. Israel parliament votes to overturn ban on Israelis entering parts of the West Bank that were evacuated back in 2005. We're starting you off with some news alert where Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin are holding a summit and summit talks at the Kremlin as we speak. The meeting is being closely watched around the world as possibly deciding the course of geopolitics and the Ukraine war ahead. The two sides are expected to discuss, of course, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. A spokesman for the Kremlin said that they will continue, quote, a thorough exchange of views. This was highlighted in their informal meeting on Monday. There are concerns in the West that China's support for Russia, which is currently based on technology and trade, will turn and become military. Earlier today, Xi met Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin in Moscow. During that meeting, Xi Jinping invited him to visit China and called for regular meetings between the two nations. The Chinese leader's visit comes amid concerns that China may be preparing to provide lethal weapons to Russia for its war in Ukraine, which China has denied. It also comes days after Putin was accused of war crimes, including orchestrating the forced removal of Ukrainian children to Russian territory. Of course, this is a developing story, and we'll keep you updated as we get more updates ourselves. Here in New York, the police have tightened security ahead of a possible indictment of Donald Trump, the former president, over hush money paid to a porn actress. Trump, who is seeking the Republican nomination for the White House again in 2024, predicted he would be arrested today. On Saturday, Trump urged his followers on social media to protest what he said was his looming arrest. Many of Trump's supporters, however, have opted not to heed to Trump's call, fearing that it may be a trap by the feds and liberal groups. Stormy Daniels, the porn star, says that she had an affair with Trump. She claims the former U.S. president gave her $130,000 before the 2016 election to not discuss the encounter. Trump has maintained that nothing of that sort ever happened, and in 2018 told reporters that he knew nothing about any payments made. If Trump is charged, it would mark the first ever indictment of a former U.S. president. Trump's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, was sentenced to prison for orchestrating hush payments to Daniels and another woman, former Playboy model Karen McDougal. Karen McDougal says that she had a months-long affair with Trump before he took office. Trump says this is all a political witch hunt. He says it's an attempt to take down the leading candidate in the Republican Party. Trump's fellow Republicans have widely criticized the probe as being politically motivated. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Trump's rival for the Republican presidential nomination, said the district attorney was imposing a political agenda. However, he also took a veiled swipe at Trump himself. Take a listen.
I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star to secure silence over some type of alleged affair. I can't speak to that.
Trump is facing multiple legal challenges and investigations. Cases include his handling of classified documents and his alleged efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Okay, for more on this, we are joined by Ray Locker. He's an author, journalist, and columnist. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Ray, welcome back to WION. Great to have you. So, former President Donald Trump claims that he will be arrested today. A rumor that he started himself. We don't know that this will happen. Actually, there are reports right now from law enforcement that there might be another witness as early as tomorrow. So if there even is an indictment, it might be pushed back to next week. What do you make of all of this and this circus around this case that seemed to have been resurrected from the past all of a sudden by Alvin Bragg here in New York?
Well, Susan, this is Donald Trump writ large. This is what he has done throughout his entire career as a businessman and politician. He says one thing, does another. He says another thing, does the same thing. I mean, he's not consistent. The only consistent thing about him is he's inconsistent. He's basically crazy. He lies all the time. I mean, that's the root of the man. I mean, we saw it every day when he was president. It's consistent with the actions in this case as well.
What about how Alvin Bragg is conducting this investigation or this possible indictment? Do you think it would make Donald Trump more popular among his supporters and the Republican Party ultimately, considering the fact that, this case just seems very flimsy? On the one hand, it seems charges that are a misdemeanor that's being pumped up to be a felony, and these were charges that the federal government didn't want to touch. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I mean, it's curious. I don't know all the ins and outs of Bragg's case. I haven't been following it all that closely. I'm not a lawyer. It can appear that way to the untrained eye. I just don't know. The fact is, there's smoke in everything that Trump does. Maybe there's fire there. I mean, Michael Cohen, not the most credible witness, but most of what he said about what he did at Trump's behest has turned out to be true. And he said that he paid off Stormy Daniels because Trump wanted him to. And I'm sure there were some sketchy things involved with the transfer of that money. So, yes, I mean, you can criticize Bragg's case. And if Trump is arrested and indicted, he will have a chance to criticize that in court. That's what the legal system is all about. So we'll see. We'll see how that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be watching very closely. Ray Locker, thank you so much for joining us on WION, and we look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Thank you.
20 years after the U.S. and its allies invaded Iraq, the U.S. Congress now wants its war powers back. U.S. lawmakers have signaled support for a bipartisan bill in the Senate that would repeal the president's powers to authorize wars. If the bill is passed, it would end two previous authorizations for the use of military force, one from 1991 Gulf War and one passed in 2002 before the invasion of Iraq. Some critics say that the 2002 authorization is a case of misuse by powers by the president. The 2002 authorization was originally passed when then U.S. President George Bush administration prepared to invade Iraq. Reports further suggest that historically presidents who have authorized wars have benefited in their second run for the White House, which raises questions on the timing of this new bill that was introduced by the Republicans. As Ukraine struggles to protect itself against Russia, there is growing pressure on President Biden to make a military intervention. Once his war authorization powers are taken away from him, Biden will have to seek approval from Congress, something that is bound to hit roadblocks. On Monday, U.S. President Joe Biden signed a bill that requires the declassification of information related to the origins of the coronavirus that caused COVID-19. The U.S. president said that he shared Congress's goal of releasing much of the information, as much of it as possible, at least, about the origins of COVID-19. The bill sailed through the Senate and the House of Representatives without opposition before being sent to the White House for President Biden's signature. The COVID-19 outbreak began in 2019 in the eastern Chinese city of Wuhan, leading to almost 7 million deaths worldwide so far. The United States has registered over 1 million deaths. Meanwhile, health officials and the U.S. intelligence community remain divided over whether the virus was spread randomly from an animal or leaked during a research in Wuhan. The U.S. Energy Department, one of the agencies investigating the disaster, recently concluded with low confidence that the virus did indeed come from a lab. The assessment agreed with the FBI, but contradicted the conclusion of several other agencies. Many U.S. officials have said that the pandemic's origins may never be known. China says and claims that the laboratory leak has no credibility. Biden noted that he had directed intelligence agencies to investigate COVID-19's origins in 2021 and that the work is ongoing. He added that his administration would continue to review all classified information, including potential links to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. A drug-resistant and potentially deadly fungus, Candida auris, is emerging fungal threats that has been spreading in the United States since it was first reported back in 2016. According to reports, the fungus infected at least 2,377 people in the U.S. back in 2022. The swift spread has led to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the World Health Organization to label it a growing threat to public health. The disease that has a mortality rate of 60% has now spread to more than 35 states in the U.S. and 40 countries around the world. Reports say the fungus discovered about 15 years ago in Japan, and the rising temperatures is seen as a potential reason for its rapid spread. A lot of people are now comparing the fungus disease to the zombie fungus from a popular television show called The Last of Us. However, reports say that doctors have stated that this is an infection that occurs in extremely ill individuals who are usually sick with lots of other issues, and so it's not supposed to be confused with the zombie fungus. However, according to the WHO, the full impact of fungus infections globally is unknown because of lack of data. Furthermore, the agency urged countries to strengthen surveillance of fungal pathogens and expand laboratory capacity to screen for fungal diseases. What a sport without its iconic rivalries. We just witnessed El Clasico between Barcelona and Real Madrid over the weekend. Every cricket World Cup throws up an India-Pakistan clash. Federer versus Nadal remains the defining tennis rivalry this century. But have you heard of Battle of the Blues? Our correspondent, Dasuni Athauda, gets us this special report of Sri Lankan cricket's marquee rivalry.
A 25,000 plus audience. A visit by the president of Sri Lanka, no less. This, after all, is the second oldest uninterrupted cricket series in the sport. They call it the Battle of the Blues. It's the annual cricket match between Royal College Colombo and St. Thomas College, Mount Lavinia. Last weekend saw the 144th staging of the match. Actually, it's no longer a match. It is a part of Sri Lanka's social fabric.
Today, we are at the Battle of the Blues, popularly known as the Royal Collegiate Cricket Encounter, which is happening for its 144th uninterrupted cricketing year.
The Sinhalese Sports Club in Colombo has been hosting the Battle of the Blues since 1994. Played over 3 days, the 144th edition of this match was a celebration in more ways than one. The COVID-19 pandemic had forced this game to be played behind closed doors for the last 2 years. The restrictions were lifted this year, and alumni, casual fans and even prominent cricketers turned up to savour this unique festival of cricket.
The Royal Committee is something very special to me. I've been watching the game since the 1980s and I've enjoyed every single match so far for several decades.
The Royal Committee is not only an event between two schools, it's part and parcel of the culture of this country. The first match which was played in 1880 and now we are playing the 144th game. This is, until the COVID came, it was the longest cricket match which was played without the disruption.
To understand this match's unique place in Sri Lankan society, one must go back to 1880. The Royal College was set up in 1835 and is known as the Eton of Sri Lanka. Following the model of the British public schools, the school has produced distinguished alumni who have played this match, including Junius Jayawardene, Ranjan Madugale and current international Kusal Pereira. St. Thomas was set up by an Eton old boy, and that has sparked off a rivalry that draws instant comparisons with Eton and Harrow, the iconic English public schools. Prominent alumni include Sri Lanka's first Prime Minister, D.S. Senanaike, after whom the trophy for this match has been named, former captain Duleep Mendes and Jeevan Mendes. It's not just the cricket and the rivalry that's iconic. The tents that spring up around the stadium during the annual match draw their names from the sport of equestrian. It's a place to catch up, reminisce about old times and also cheer the boys in the middle. The Royals earned the bragging rights with a 180-run win over the weekend, giving them a 36th win, one more than the bitter rivals.
While the world's second oldest cricketing encounter ends in favour of Royal College, Colombo, the tradition and the continuedness, along with the uninterrupted nature of this cricket match, is sure to continue for generations to come.
The 92-year-old media tycoon and billionaire Rupert Murdoch is set to get married for the 5th time. Murdoch says this would be his last and that he hopes that it would be. The wedding is set to take place in late summer. He announced his engagement to his partner, Anne Leslie Smith. The 66-year-old, a former police chaplain, met Murdoch in September last year. Smith's late husband was Chester Smith. He was a country singer and radio and TV executive. Rupert Murdoch says that he was afraid of falling in love again. Murdoch divorced his 4th wife, Jerry Hall, in August of 2022. The media tycoon has 6 children from his previous 3 marriages. He was previously married to Australian flight attendant Patricia Booker when he was 25 years old. They got married in Australia in 1956. They were married for 11 years, had 1 child, and got divorced in 1967. Murdoch then got married to Scottish-born journalist Anna Torv. Torv and Murdoch separated in 1999 after 32 years of marriage. They had 3 children. Murdoch then got married to a Chinese-born entrepreneur, Wendy Deng. The couple was married for 14 years. They had 2 children who were born after their divorce in 2014. Finally, Murdoch married supermodel Jerry Hall in London in 2016. American rapper and entrepreneur Snoop Dogg is once again expanding his business empire. This time, he is branching out into a line of premium coffee products with beans sourced locally from Indonesia. Snoop's coffee bean will be sourced from Gayo on the island of Sumatra. The rapper has partnered with Indonesian coffee entrepreneur Michael Rady to launch Indo XYZ. It will be a premium lifestyle coffee. Generation of entrepreneurs and innovators. Indo XYZ will launch exclusively in Nevada and California. It will then be followed by a national retail rollout. The cold brew beverage will retail starting at $5.99. The whole bean will cost $17.99. In addition to releasing more than a dozen studio albums and receiving multiple Grammy nominations as a rapper, Snoop Dogg has been expanding his business empire. The rapper has expanded into pet accessories and a gluten-free cereal called Snoop Loops. In 2020, he launched his own wine label. As a vocal cannabis advocate, he has his own line of cannabis products. That's all from us here in New York City. Thank you so much for staying with us and watching, but don't go away. More news and headlines coming up on WION World is One.
There are many other